I'd been living in cities for most of my adult life, bouncing between apartments and loud neighbors and flickering overhead lights. When the offer came through, 3 months in a remote estate rent-free while the owners were overseas, I didn't hesitate. "You'll have total peace and quiet," the agent told me. "It's a writer's dream. Peace. Quiet." It sounded like heaven. I arrived on a gray-skied morning in late October. The ride took me deeper into the hills of northern Vermont than I expected. Roads narrowed to single-lane curves, then gravel, then almost nothing at all. Just as I started to think I'd gotten lost, the trees parted, and the house appeared through the mist like something sketched in charcoal. It was tall, narrow, stone and dark timber. The roof pitched steeply, and the windows were long and narrow, like slits in a castle wall. Ivy choked the southern face. Moss carpeted the edges of the foundation. It looked like it had been waiting. The key slid into the lock with a surprising smoothness. The door creaked open with a groan, so human I actually whispered sorry under my breath. The interior was preserved. It didn't look abandoned. It looked untouched. Time hadn't moved here. Dust coated every ledge, yes, but the furniture was arranged just so. Books stacked beside a cracked leather chair, candles in holders, a thick rug that dulled my footsteps. The silence was absolute. I took my bags upstairs. The second floor was lined with portraits, none of people I recognized. The faces were pale, stiff, eyes that followed. I tried not to look at them too long. The master bedroom had a 4-poster bed draped in a gauzy canopy. The walls were papered in deep green with strange repeating patterns, circles, lines, something that looked almost like an alphabet. I unpacked slowly. By evening, the wind had started. The house creaked and groaned in protest. I made tea and sat by the fireplace, watching the flames. The cell signal was gone. My laptop connected to Wi-Fi, but it was local only, no internet. A blessing, I thought. I was here to write. But when I tried to type that night, the words came slow. Something about the place distracted me. My thoughts drifted. I kept catching myself looking up, toward the hallway, toward the walls. Listening. It felt like the house was holding its breath. The second night, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't the wind, it had died down by then. And it wasn't fear, not really. More like a pressure in the air, an awareness, like I was being watched. I tried to shake it off, made tea, read. Eventually, I wandered down to the sitting room with my journal, hoping a change of scenery might help. That's when I heard it. Just barely. A rustling. No, that's not right. A whisper. Soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. It came from the wall. I froze, pen hovering over paper, listening hard. It stopped. I waited. 30 seconds, a minute, then it came again, like someone whispering through cupped hands. Not words exactly, at least not at first, just rhythm, a pattern. I got up and pressed my ear to the stone wall. The whispering stopped again, but the wall was warm. That startled me more than anything. Everything in the house had been cold to the touch. But here, right here in this one spot, the stone radiated heat. Faint, but real. I pulled away. Now I was properly creeped out. I returned upstairs, double-locked my door, not that it would help, not against walls, and turned on a white noise app, just to drown out whatever else might be lurking. I dreamed of mouths in stone. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The walls had a secret, and I needed to find it. Armed with a flashlight, hammer and chisel I found in the cellar, I returned to the spot I'd measured. It was behind a shelf in the narrow study, an alcove filled with leather-bound books no one had opened in decades. I pushed the shelf aside. Dust exploded into the air. Behind it, the wall. I ran my hand along the surface, searching for seams. There, a hairline crack, an old repair, badly done. I knocked gently. Hollow. My breath caught. I started chipping. The stone gave slowly, resisting me like an old scar. But after an hour, I broke through. Behind the thin layer was another wall, this one of wooden planks, aged and dry. I pried one loose. Beyond it, darkness, a passage, and cold. Not normal cold. Dead cold, like walking into a crypt. The space was narrow, maybe 3 feet wide, just enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. My flashlight barely pierced the dark. I hesitated, heart racing. Then I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Not rot, but something worse. Old, wet stone, iron, and beneath that something sharp, almost electric, like fear. The walls inside were different. No wallpaper, no plaster, stone, raw, carved, not just symbols, words, thousands of them, sentences, verses. Names. I turned slowly, light sweeping across the walls. They were covered in poetry, dark, fragmented, mad, etched by hand again and again, layer on layer, until the stone itself seemed to be bleeding ink. And in the center of the far wall, a name: Joseph Addington. I am the voice, I am the mouth. The walls live, the walls take, the words are never enough. Suddenly I felt watched. I spun, but the tunnel behind me was empty. Still, I wasn't alone. I felt something press against my thoughts, like fingers pushing into my brain, whispering in a language I didn't understand, but that made sense anyway. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over something. It was a chair, an old wooden chair with leather straps and stains. I bolted. I stopped writing. For a full day, I resisted the itch, the craving, the pull of the pen, and for a few hours the house went quiet. Then the voices returned, angrier, harsher. Not whispers now, but insistent murmurs, pushing at the edge of my mind. They knew I'd been in the corridor. They knew I'd read the words, and they wanted more. That night I dreamed of teeth in stone, rows of them, smiling, hungry. They bit into my fingers one by one, until all I could do was write with the blood. When I woke, I was at the desk, pen in hand, 5 pages filled in my notebook, none of which I remembered writing. The words weren't mine. They were stories, but not fictional. Descriptions of real things, real people. One was about a woman screaming behind a brick wall. Her nails were described in exacting detail, split, bleeding, scraping furiously at stone. Another spoke of a child lost inside a mirror watching his twin take over his life. And another, a short passage, was about a man in a house, alone, writing, hearing things. The last line, "And now you know his name." I dropped the notebook. The walls whispered again, joyfully. I tried to destroy them, all of them, the notebooks, my own writing. I threw them into the fireplace, pages curled and blackened, flames licking the words into ash. But as I watched, I saw the ashes dance, twisting upward, coalescing. And then I saw the words, my words, forming again across the stones of the fireplace mantel, carved into the stone like they'd always been there. The next morning, my reflection blinked before I did. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing my teeth. Then I froze, because my reflection didn't stop when I did. It blinked, then it smiled. I didn't. I barricaded every window, every door. I covered the mirrors, threw away every pen. It didn't matter. The words found me. They itched inside my skin, crawled behind my eyes, scratched at the inside of my skull until I had to let them out. I wrote on napkins, on walls, on my arms, always the same themes: voices, stone, memory, teeth. On the 5th morning, the hallway had changed again. Longer now, warped slightly, slanting downward. I knew where it led. Back to the sealed corridor, the one I'd uncovered, the one I'd sworn not to open again. But the house wanted me there, pulled me like gravity, like instinct. I resisted until sundown. Then I found myself walking without realizing it, flashlight in hand, fingers tracing along cold stone. When I reached the wall, I didn't even hesitate. I tore through the makeshift barrier I'd built. Splinters and plaster cracked and fell away. The opening yawned wide, exhaling stale air into my face. The tunnel waited. Inside, the carvings had changed. They moved. Somehow, new symbols had appeared since I last visited, and they glowed, faintly but undeniably, traced with some bioluminescent fungus or something far older. A sickly green light pulsed with a heartbeat rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. It was alive. I pushed deeper, stepping past the chair, past the stain, to the very back of the corridor, where a new door had appeared. Not a modern door. A slab of blackened oak, bound in rusted iron, set into the stone like it had always been there, just waiting to be noticed. No knob, no handle. But the whispering behind it was deafening. I reached out without thinking. The moment my palm touched the wood, the door melted, not like liquid, more like it folded away, unwinding into ash that curled upward into the ceiling like smoke. Beyond it was a chamber, round, vaulted, the air so cold I gasped, and in the center, something impossible. It was a mouth, massive, carved directly into the stone floor, at least 6 feet wide, not human-shaped, far too wide, with jagged, uneven teeth made from cracked bone and fossilized wood. The lips were stone but pulsed with breath. Hot wind exhaled from within, carrying the scent of rot, of parchment, of memory. All along the walls, the same carvings spiraled outward in 1,000 scripts, words, names, stories. And then I saw them, the faces, dozens of them, embedded in the walls like fossils, their mouths open in eternal scream, eyes wide, frozen. One of them was mine. And then it spoke, this time in real words. You are enough. You are the vessel, the final name. I screamed, begged, clawed at the walls. Then the chamber went dark, and I was outside again. I woke in the kitchen, like nothing had happened. But when I looked in the mirror, my reflection was gone. Not different. Gone, just a blank surface. And behind me, in the reflection of the wall, I saw words, new ones, carving themselves in real time. My handwriting, the story I had just spoken, but I hadn't written anything down. Now I sit in the hallway, typing this, because I think the house wants it shared, because I think you're next, because if you're reading this, they've already found your name. It's been 17 days, I think. Time doesn't flow the same way here anymore. The clock stopped 3 nights ago. The sunlight through the windows now glows a soft amber, as if trapped in perpetual late afternoon. I haven't slept. I don't think I need to. Not while the walls keep whispering. They don't just speak in words now. They hum in frequencies just below hearing. They tap out rhythms that match my heartbeat. They reflect memories in the glass of my tea or the shine of a spoon. Sometimes they speak in my voice. Sometimes yours. Yesterday I found a door that hadn't been there before. Inside was a room with no corners, just endless curve. Walls smooth as porcelain but warm like skin. There was a desk, and on it a book. Not a journal, a ledger. The pages were filled with names, each line etched in meticulous handwriting. Some were crossed out, some still glowed faintly as if recently added. At the very end the pen lay still. The final line read, "You." No name. No details, just you. I backed out of the room and sealed it behind me, but the sound of the pen scratching across the page continued for hours after. I've come to accept it. The house isn't haunted, it is the ghost. It's a spirit made of memory and echo, built from everything left unsaid, unwritten, undone. It feeds not on fear, but attention, focus, story. That's how it lives on, through the people who listen, through the people who write it down, through the people who read it. So here it is, the last whisper, the final paragraph, the one I won't write, because if I do, the house wins. So I'm stopping here. You can close this page, you can go back to your life, pretend this was just a story, just fiction. But one night, when the lights are low and the walls seem to breathe, you'll hear it, that voice, calling. And if you answer, well, you already know how this ends.